collection of supplemental resources and then their reconsideration. A little more specific reconsideration policy that's attached to that particular. It's not a broad grievance. It actually refers to the steps of reconsideration. So I thought if our landing spot down the road is that we're actually going to address and change and, for lack of a better word, create a more robust policy addressing this particular topic, I thought this kind of gave some context and framework to what that might look like. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes.
Or why I provided these? Not that you'll see a similar flavor here in these documents to this. Some of the flow is the same. Some of the ideas are the same. So we're not completely recreating the wheel, but also there's a lot of things that are different. And I'm not saying just adopt this. I'm just saying the flow of it and where we land in regards to policy being specific to these materials and the reconsideration or challenge of those materials. I thought maybe down the road this would be a place for us to land, with the thought that we probably live in process for about a year to make sure we got our ducks in a row and tweak and polish and make changes as we practice what we're trying to do here before we actually put it in policy.
So, Mr. Nampa, you mentioned our current practice. Now, this is something I've always, current.
Sorry, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Should we
current policy?
pull the current policy that we have so that we can refer to that policy? Just because I think that for
Courtney, if you could give me about 3 minutes, I'm loading the documents that Scott just gave me, and then
you want me to pull it up here?
Actually, I was just going to link it right into this tab. If you can give me 3 minutes. We're not quite there. Just give me 3 minutes.
I'll buy you time because then I can get up that one too. So we'll work simultaneously.
Like,
so I'm gonna read why we're about time.
Did this email from Mr. Tanner get to you? I sent it to Greg, and did this get to you?
I don't believe so, but maybe. Perfect.
I think he sent this to the whole board too. So.
He did.
Policy 2510. If we're pulling that up.
I'm just going to link it. Just give me 1 second. I was just loading West Data's policy, and I have it. When we refresh, you'll see it says West Data. And then just grab the other policies.
Did you want our policy up, Brooke?
Yeah, I just thought it might be good
2510.
Yeah, I just thought it might be good for us to just look at our policy.
I don't know if you heard that. I'm almost
we know
there.
we're all kind of looking at it.
Got it up here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll still get all the other documents that were in the previous package. That's just the one.
Okay. Good to go. Your 3 minutes is almost
I
up.
know, I am. You are not an easy man. Just kidding.
Okay, we're leaving at 7:30.
What was your deciding factor?
6:30.
Oh, I just wondered why you decided all of a sudden 8 minutes in that it was 2 hours.
Okay, if you refresh, oh, well, he's got it pulled up, but all of it's in the packet currently.
Okay. All right, Mr. Knopf, I think we're good to go.
Okay. Someone was going to ask a question, I think.
No, that was my question is
Okay.
the current.
Okay.
But you were referring to a current policy.
Right, so
Okay.
2510 and then the grievance policy. So then at that point, with some context there, with that West Data policy, I guess our next step would be to just work through this front flow chart. And now that you got the opportunity to review it, read through it, suggestions, editings, things to add.
No, but can
Obviously, I think that works in combination with the second page there, where just kind of gives more details of what some of those things mean. So
what I really, really love about you giving us something like this is something I'm learning about myself in the conversations that we're having is that I think the philosophy that we read here gives us a scope or the lens in which we should be looking before we discuss these types of materials. I love this where it says the whole thing, the policy of this is West Ada's, guys. The policy of the Board of Trustees of West Ada School District is to provide a wide range of learning resources at varying levels of difficulty with diversity of appeal and different points of view. The district supports the principles of intellectual freedom inherent in the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. I just love this. And I love the way that this starts because I think it frames the lens by which we're making this decision. I had to throw that out there because I love stuff like this. That was it. Just my comment. Okay.
thank you.
Yep, sorry.
One of the things that I marked down to add would be something in level 4 that refers to a timeline to appeal to level 4. So a statement in there that says, so the levels above give us 10 operational days. I thought maybe something that said within 5 or 10 operational days. If the complainant wants to go to level 4, they have a window there in which they can appeal to it, and if they don't meet that deadline, then level 3 is the final decision. If that made sense, kind of instead of just leaving it out there vaguely, where someone comes back at us 6 months later and says, "We changed our mind and we'd like to go to level 4." I think there needs to be a tighter timeline on that. That was my thought.
No, absolutely. Timelines are always good, especially in a due process type of a thing like this. Is you don't put timelines on it.
Would you say 5 operational days, 10 calendar days? What kind of timeline?
I'd probably. I mean, you got other. The other ones are 30 district, 30 operational days, then 10 operational days. I'd be okay with 10.
I would too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the things I wanted to ask is in the level 1, and I'm impartial either way, it's just a question. If I come as a parent or something else and I complain about a book, the book stays in play or whatever it is that I'm complaining about stays in play until this full process is done. Is that the intention?
So if we revert to guiding principles, if you see the last bulleted item there, in parentheses, we have 3 possible approaches to this on that. And so we would say as a board, or you guys would say as a board, and this process would say it remains available with restrictions, or it's removed. So my thought there when I presented that we would choose one of those approaches.
Okay.
And my question in level 1 is, and this is a question for pretty much everything when there's a committee involved, is how is the selection made? How is the application for the request to be on, the selection to be on, and how is that done? Or how would it be done? I guess either in this case or currently another committee.
Right. So so you want to address the committees?
Yeah, I mean that. Yeah,
just so like a standing. So the standing committee, we view that as that's something where we would go out and put people on it for a 2-year commitment.
Who's we? I think that's what he's saying.
That's what I'm asking.
So what we listed there, with the way I envision that is, it would probably be my responsibility to go gather those representatives across the district as employees. One of the suggestions or questions I put on there, because right now in this particular proposal, we don't have community and/or parent representation on the standing committee. I don't have a dog in that fight. If you guys want a community and/or a parent member on that standing committee, certainly that's viable and easily put that in place. We would have to figure out how we assign someone to that particular position.
Well, and that was my question I wrote down here in that standing reconsideration committee is why no parents at this level?
Yeah.
I mean, but it's being proposed without parents. So what's the thought behind that?
There was no thought behind it.
Okay.
I just didn't put down community member or parent on this one.
Okay.
I mean, there's no, like I said,
Well,
I
to
don't-
me,
either way,
a standing committee though is, I mean, because it says a 2-year commitment, right? So that to me is a little easier to have staff, district staff on that when you have a 2-year commitment compared to community members or parents or students. I mean, not that it's not doable, but I worry about the turnover because the goal is to have the same people on it for 2 years, right? I mean, to keep that consistency.
And again, I think if I may, one of the things with the level 1 piece is that there's a concern brought forth. There's a group of educators that are working in the district, reviewing that piece, validating that parent's concerns, and then having a conversation of here's why we think whatever we think about that piece, right? Having a conversation, working with that parent. And then if that doesn't go, then it goes to the next level where we start to get deeper in committee, and it's more of it's a broader committee looking at that work, if you will. So I agree with what you're saying, Trustee Simpson, of it seems to be that, okay, this came up, do we review it? Is that consistent within our district and within schools and with those pieces, rather than a broader community for every one of those? Because the standing committee could theoretically have a lot of work. I mean, I think our practice has been, we haven't seen a lot of those in the last few years, but it could be that that's the reason for that. So that's why it's the standing committee. It's a part of what they do as an employee. The next thing is, as you broaden that out, that's where we get to, do we have to review this material or piece of material? Correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but I just wanted to make sure that that's my view of that and why we would leave that at that.
the thought was to add a filter in there to where we're not going from level 1 to level 3 type of process, right? Because level 3 is a fairly intense process. It's going to take a lot of legwork to assemble the committee, and then the committee's got some work to do. So level 2 is kind of seen as that filter, just to make sure that what is sent to 3 or decided that we're pulling right then and there, right? Or restrictions right then and there. If we can come up with an agreeable solution at level 2 with that group that meets, we thought probably that group would just meet once a month. So that's why the 30 operational days. The standing committee first, at some point the first week of every month or whatever it is, would just say, okay, here's what we have on the docket, and let's take a look and run through these. And then we might say, that if solutions can happen there, that just saves a lot of time and a lot of work and a lot of effort to get into the process that level 3 requires.
So I have this is a concern that I have. And this, you're gonna find this to be a very weird, out of the box concern. But I've gone to all these websites for associations for librarians. They have their own groups, large national groups, incredible. And it's amazing how they all believe that any book and all books should be accessible, no matter what. So to me, the bias is already starting from librarians. It's already, there's, challenging any book. This really doesn't make sense. For them to be part of the committee, to me, they already come with a bias in place where it's going to be harder for parents who are on the committee to, because you have here how many librarians? 3.
Trust the process. That the parent's they're going to have a difficult time trusting the process.
Well, I think it's going to be a committee where there's no bias, there's just members of the teachers and parents. But the librarians to me already come with a preset mindset.
Right, well, but we all do.
Yeah, bias is
We
everybody.
all, everybody comes with their own bias. The parents who are complaining come with their own bias,
Yes, but-
right? Like, I mean,
But I'm talking about the committee. No, I'm not talking about the complainers, I'm not talking about the people.
Are you talking level 1 committee or level 3 committee? The level
Level
1 committee. We're still on just the
Yeah.
standing reconsideration committee, the standing committee.
I just think that's hard to, I mean, one, I don't even know who these 3 librarians would be. So I have no idea what sort of bias they would bring.
Well, if you go to the things that they all believe in, they already have the
Right,
bias.
but are our librarians even members of the associations that you're looking at?
We only have one certified librarian, and she probably is. I would doubt that the other.
I can't speak to certain.
And I felt like this is totally informal, right? We just get a talk. Oh,
It seems that way.
sorry. Sorry, I'm just asking.
No,
I'm
it's
really
fine, it's
trying
fine.
to. So one of the things that I just want to bring up, because I totally, I think that if you become a librarian, it's because you believe in the power of the written word. So like, I think that like you're like, I think reading is important. I think these are important. But when we heard from that committee, that kind of was going through this process a little bit. A couple of those people specifically said that they disagreed with like the common sense media. They disagreed with a lot of those things. So I think that once they read the books, there wasn't that innate bias that you're speaking of per se, like when the committee played out. That makes sense. What I'm saying? Like when the committee played out and we heard from the committee, I think that we got really good feedback because, you know, we heard from this one and then this one and then this one and this one. But I also think that this is just that first level where not everything has to come to the level 3. So I think this first committee just says like, hey, there's something here that we want to look at, and don't we want to give parents the opportunity to work with administration and staff and faculty first? Like, isn't that the goal of where we're trying to get to? And then if it really is unresolved, then in a very quick amount of time, because we could say right here, level 1, that the material is removed, or he gave us 3 options, because I think that in some ways we just need to understand what the ramifications would be, but you could say that, and then they're reviewing it, and then level 2 says, hey, here's what will happen, and they're giving us a really quick time frame. And I think that this helps to clear it up for the public, because part of the whole thing with the books was, where are these books at in the review process? And nobody could specifically answer us, but now we can say, oh, they're at level 2. And then if they make it to level 3, at that point, you get a committee with 2 building admins, 3 librarians, 2 teachers. Oh, no, sorry. I lost it. Oh, sorry. That committee, if we get there, has the principal or designee, the classroom teacher, the librarian, include counselor or instructional coach if deemed reasonable. Then the district level coach representatives from the special education department, 5 parents to be appointed by the board of trustees, 1 parent representing each zone. Complainant is welcome to attend committee meetings, but it is not a member of the committee. As stated in level 3, they do have the right to request to be present at the committee after the first meeting. And then the other thing that we could do is say that these have to be live streamed.
Just sorry, that was a lot. Tracy is online, and so she just messaged me. When do I let people? How do I let everyone know when I want to talk? I said just go ahead and talk, but I also don't know if that's how we should let it. So I just want to make sure she's on. I don't think she's ready to say anything, but
Functionality is she is live. She can mute or unmute herself, but she's a live participant.
thank you. So just so we're all aware of that.
Can you hear?
Hello.
If you give us a thumbs up.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Uh,
Can I say something? Hello?
You're up. You're ready to go.
Okay. So one thing that I am concerned about is the librarian. I feel like the librarian has a lot of power. I feel like there's no criteria or no accountability there. And, you know, how many books, usually new books, come into the library? How often? What's the budget? Is there a way that we can have some public web page where people can see what is in the library, where parents can see what's in the library, be alerted when new books come into the library so we can keep track? And I don't think that the librarian, as the one librarian who's been there for 24 years, stated she feels children should be able to see everything and anything. She just had a broad opinion that all kids that, well, I don't know if she said all kids, but she said all materials should be allowed. And that to me sounds very disturbing. And so I asked her, was there any criteria or standards or accountability? And she said, no, just whatever I decide. I know that I would be uncomfortable with that as a parent. So I think there should be something where that librarian should have some accountability or criteria to look at before she can agree or, bring a book in or make it. I don't know. Does anybody have an answer to how many new books we have in the library? And could we make an alert so parents can be aware of what's coming in and going?
Tracy, I don't have, this is Trustee Simpson, Mandy. I don't have an answer for that, definitely. But I think the difference is that you're talking about a new purchase process, and currently right now we're talking about consideration process.
I'm sorry, I can hardly hear you for some reason. You said the process, now what?
I think the process that you're wanting to speak to is the like the purchasing process of new material, and we're currently talking about the reconsideration process. So books that are already currently in our libraries today, what does that process look like if parents or community members want us to reconsider those?
Okay, and I understand that, but I think this is connected to that in the sense that I feel like we need to maybe have a system where people can look at the library books, or parents can go in, the computer and see library books. I think that would put more engagement and more responsibility on the parents, because it's a lot of books, it's a lot of students, and we can't do it all. And so if they have access to the material in the library, I don't know. And then, of course, you guys are talking about the committee with the librarian part of it. That's why I brought up the librarian. But that's it. Thank you, Trustee Simpson.
Next year, maybe. So I do think part of presenting how West Ada tied those two policies together, we are starting to create this selection document for the criteria. I think that is an important piece of why we would have level 2 and have a standing committee. And so part of that standing committee's job would be to see, does this material make sense that it followed? Like, is it obvious that we followed it?
It would be
Or
kind
is
of
it obvious that we didn't follow it?
like a dual purpose committee then.
And kind of that checks and balances on both sides, right? Like is the challenge relevant and realistic, and is there some merit to the challenge? Is there also evidence, and this is why we thought librarians would be there, is there evidence that we actually followed the criteria to select that material? Like, is it someone's personal opinion that they felt like that material, or can we connect some dots that say there's some educational value for these grade levels, or this course, or this content? And so kind of that internal checks and balances at that level 2 before we go to that much larger stakeholder representation group to really dive into a particular piece of work. Just kind of feeling like that level with that committee being represented by the people that are on there is kind of for that internal audit before, like I said, we go to level 3, which is now pretty intense, right? That's the pretty intense review, and that's the one that has the full stakeholder representation on it. And that's the level in which you're going to read the book. You're going to have those full engaging conversations and evaluation of, what's here with this material. Maybe that brings us a little bit of context and insight into the thinking of those 2 levels and why a standing committee that's kind of there as that quick checks and balances and buffer. It doesn't have to be there. Like I said, obviously this is all just a thought that this is a possibility. So we can carve, cut, take out, put in.
I just think as part of the process, handling things at the lowest level possible, whether we agree with librarians or not, but hopefully we agree that our librarians are the people who should be our lowest level in the library, right? I mean, that is just like if something happens in the classroom and a parent calls me about it, I'm gonna say, have you talked to that teacher first? Cause that's the lowest level, right? Okay, and you don't agree with what the teacher said, now I want you to go to the building principal, right? So to me, it makes sense that you do have librarians at that very first level coming in, because they also could maybe say, this is why we ordered the book.
Absolutely.
Here's the process we followed to get there, right? This is why we have it. This is maybe why we don't have it at the elementary level. This is maybe why we don't have it at the middle school level, or this is why we have it at all 3 levels. I don't know, depending on the scenario. But then, because I think if you have it just level 3, we've then cut out a lot of our, we've completely cut out our librarians from the process.
I think I understand what you're saying.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So I'm
because-
just thinking like leveled,
Right.
it makes sense to me that
It makes sense to me too.
we wouldn't necessarily have all librarians from the district, but having that representation.
Oh, yeah.
Would be
then
the start.
The librarian needs to make her case or his case.
Well, but they also need to be a part of the process.
And be able to,
Yeah.
guide
To
they
learn.
have to guide that process.
They
Somebody's
have to-
gotta guide.
Well, they also have to be able to learn what the community standard is. Like, the goal can't be to cut out librarians. The goal is to collectively meet with the librarian and develop new processes together, because we want to keep librarians, right? I don't know how to look
Yeah.
at Tracy, guys.
So,
Okay, good. Tracy, I heard you. I tried to do 2 things at once, so
Right there in that little
I know, but
spot.
if I look back, I see my own body and not happening. It's not. I am very tired.
There's
I'm sorry, I didn't even hear what you said. It's really choppy, very choppy. But again,
Sorry.
as far as the librarians, I think there needs to be a criteria and accountability there. If they're going to be the gatekeepers of the library. Can you hear me?
Yeah, so she's
Hello?
saying that
Yes, I heard
she
you.
feels like there needs to be a selection, like process, and which is the next piece. Look at page 3. Selection procedures. To select books like that, which I think is what I've heard Marco talk about several times, and actually all this one point or another say.
Tracy, will you mute when you're not, and then I did add information to the board packet. I'm not sure if you have access to it right now. Mandy, all the trustees are utilizing multiple
I'm having a hard time even hearing.
documents.
I think
I'm holding up the one, Tracy, that I'm looking at, but I think that's part of it, right? There's steps in this process. Well, no, I mean, in like setting up a reconsideration and then setting up a selection process that are linked at the end, but really they are 2 separate things, and hopefully we get a good selection process, right? That then hopefully we don't have books that are reconsidered
Well,
because we've established a good process for.
and I don't want to go off
Yeah.
tangent here, because we are talking just about the challenged book. So when a patron or
Wants to challenge something.
anyone wants to challenge a book, I think it's safe to assume that that's not a book that we don't have in the library yet. So it would the point would be moot. So if
Challenge a book before it's introduced.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I mean,
right.
the point is moot there. So once the librarian, if they get a book in the library and it's there and a parent finds out and they're like, oh my gosh, why is this book in the library? Then they go through this process that we're talking about right now.
Right.
The selection to get books in, I don't know if we even,
but I feel like Mr. Knopp has graciously laid that foundation in saying he's willing to have that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. But is that
Yeah.
something that we need to?
No, he said a year from now.
It is the board's role to
Create policy.
equip and a library as well in code.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
So-
And there's no question there.
But I don't think we have to wait a year, but I think the first thing that we have to say is this is our grievance policy. We just have to decide one thing, and it
Right,
just needs to be this, guys, because you're trying to
Yeah,
have a
that's what
huge
I'm saying.
conversation.
We just need to have this. So I think in step 2, and maybe this
What?
won't work. Let me throw this out.
I think you guys have multiple things you have to consider, so I think you should only focus on one tonight.
Yeah.
Because you also said in your motion on the disposal of challenge books that they're gonna be going back through the process, but you
Yes.
didn't define which process, and right now we have multiple processes
This is
that
the
you
one
guys
we're
have
focused on.
drafted, and
This is
so
the
I
one.
think what you should do is just focus on one process this
book process.
evening.
Yeah.
And then it still wouldn't be, like, whatever work's done tonight, they're gonna bring the draft as an information item to the next meeting, and then it would take action.
But
2
I
weeks
don't
from
think
now.
that the disconnect is them.
No,
The
no, no.
disconnect is us.
Oh, agreed, that's why I was just
Because
like, one.
he handed us 4
Yes,
forms, which means we're talking, well, they're connected. Yes, they live in the same realm, but we're talking about 4 separate things. And so I think that they grasp that, A, we want to change the policy. I think that you get it loud and clear. Yep. I think that they grasp that we want to have a new way. Tracy, can you hear me? Did we lose her?
No.
Tracy, can you hear me? I'm talking to you.
Yes, yes, I hear
Oh,
you.
good.
It's really staticky though.
You want me to try to,
It's
is that
really
better?
Staticky.
oh, then I'm not going to try to adjust. But I think that, that everything we've talked about and what you're saying, Marco, I do think that they grasp it. We want a new policy, but I think what they're saying is we have to have a way for the school to handle grievances before because if it's a grievance between, say, one
Right.
parent and a librarian, it's just like the coach. Talk to the coach first, be an adult, right? Then if that's not resolved, they've given us a clear-cut guideline and multiple pick or choose choices to change it on the other side. So I feel like they grasp everything we're saying. We just have to really focus on this supplemental material reconsideration. But I think that they realize we're going to talk about all of this, which makes me feel very good.
So the challenged book process that we've been talking about that we need to establish, get a really good process, especially for those that are in question.
Yep.
That we want to get back through and back in there, if that's the case. So I get where Marco is talking about the librarians in that step 2. I do understand, because what I see also is a parent coming to, I was going to start with the law enforcement thing. So yeah, there is a law that says how do you deal with the situation with the least amount of force necessary. And that's kind of how I look at this. It is that go talk to the librarian, go talk to the teacher. That is the best way to start all the time. We do that at home. Go talk to your mother. See, that's how we do it at home all the time. So,
My home too. My home too. My home too.
So I have no problem with that at all. I think that's the best way to go. And then it progresses. It's like a funnel going like this. It progresses. But I think at level 2, I appreciate, and I think it's important to have the librarians there and the staff, because they are the professionals, and I don't mean to put that in quotes. They really are the professionals in this situation. But we're going to have parents, they're going to be like, well, wait a second. That's where it's going to end, because we don't trust, and I'm just throwing this out there because I hear it already, and there could be some validity to it. I'm not saying that there isn't or there is. But we don't trust the process at that point, because that's where they're going to just deny it, and the librarians are going to want it in. So I get where Marco's coming at. So I wonder if at that step, at that standing committee, because I get why that's there with the 2-year commitment and things like that, could we have an optional, maybe open seats that are part of that standing committee? And if they're filled by parents, great. If they're not, hey, we're still moving forward with this committee no matter what. But we are going to give opportunity for patrons to be a part of this standing committee. We'd love it if you were there, but if you don't show up, you don't show up. If you don't want to participate, you don't participate. But we're still going to move forward. And I wonder if most of the time it's going to still be it's going to be that standing committee without the parents. Because I really don't know if parents will really put in, I'm sure there might be some that will really put in that. So I don't know if that's a way to look at adding both of those in there and kind of softening that. Mandy, you were going to.
Well, I just think, I'm not gonna make assumptions about what the standing committee is gonna decide. If the complainant doesn't agree, I think it is then in level 2, it's taken care of, because then the complainant can say, now I'm gonna go to the next level, which is kind of how the grievance, to me, how a grievance procedure works, right? So we start here at the lowest level, the people who have been making these decisions and information and saying, hey, we've got this challenge, and regardless of what decision comes out of that standing committee, well, whoever made the complaint can then say, no, I don't agree with this standing committee, so we're gonna bring it to level 3, which is where, like Scott was saying, is we've got a broader, all those stakeholders, a broader panel of stakeholders.
Yeah.
And I'm good with that. I think that does make sense also. And when we do get those questions from parents, like, oh, is this where it's going to end at the librarians? We can, it might, but you have that option of taking it to the next level if you so choose.
Well, plus it's published and they know exactly when it would come to the board.
So
Scott, oh, sorry. Did you reach out to West Data and find out? I know they're in this policy. We're working on it right now. Ask them what their process was going to be for the board approval piece that was added. Materials as part of Code 33512 subsection. I remember the subject curriculum one. No, because I know this is the one that also is affected by the curriculum materials that we've been discussing. It's in that talking about education materials, and so I know they're editing theirs because I was just talking to a couple of their staff members. Do you know what their process is going to be? Because I believe if they make any, including the reconsideration, it still has to go to the board for approval as per that code and the requirement for the new curriculum code. Did you reach out to them on that?
We did collaborate, but we did not talk about adding an addendum being either
so
policy
part
to
of
meet
theirs
law.
that they have to change theirs. It says educational resources in that specific code of curriculum adoption committees. It also talks about supplemental educational resources. So they have to edit theirs because it's more than just the libraries on this one. And then, but the libraries are in that same code under a different number, and I think it's number 7 subsection. And so that would be my only question that you guys will have to look at when that code is completely done, because they have changed the number of required people in it. It's not 10 anymore. So they have changed that for some just like district sizes. But how are you guys going to do that when it does go through this process? Because is the committee is going to bring the recommendation back to the board, because that would also be reconsideration.
Oh, for the standing?
Okay. No, it's for that whole, well, I guess it just depends on how you're doing that.
But that's not something really we could look at now until we get the process in place,
we'll have to put that in there too.
Well, and to me, the standing.
If you're putting it into all of them, like that's with their guidance. And then I did look in the policy manual, the districts. We don't have a standing committees policy currently. We only have
everyone's looking
right, because I did
else.
look in that. So that's another thing. I would be careful using that verb. So I did email you. So I did start looking at that, because that's another thing we have to look at as well.
Well, I wondered about committee, because it's definitely not a board. That standing committee, as stated, how things are, is not taking a recommendation to the board.
Yeah.
They're taking it to, this is what we recommend.
Right.
To the district, basically, right, and to the complainant. So I did kind of worry about the title of that. That is it a committee? Because I think most of our committees are board committees, and so that's a different, which is the new.
Well, the code,
piece, the code is
it's all curriculum or educational materials.
Is the committee makeup has to change. So I think that's the piece where we need to make sure this focused reconsideration committee meets that criteria. For the new.
That's what
because
I thought
why
too,
would
so
we
it
want to
might
dig
not.
back in and
that's not
do
what they're
this all
presenting.
again? What?
Well, that's what we're having a discussion about.
Yeah.
Could we just change the names
Could we?
of a committee and I
Well,
don't know
you
what
can,
you
I mean,
want
you
to
call
do.
things whatever you want. I think too, it's important to understand that, we're also teasing out processes, procedures, and policy. Those are kind of three different worlds.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so like informal procedures and processes to try to help the system run smoothly
Right.
isn't necessarily tied to, are you calling it a committee or not?
Right.
And so really, this is really about a process or a procedure that
The procedure
Lets us
still
begin to
has to
work,
be
right?
approved by the
Right.
board.
And so, and then obviously, if you're gonna rewrite or add to or amend or adjust policy, that's maybe where you get a little more wordsmithing legality wise. What I don't know is, I'm not aware of I haven't dug in and read the new statute that would address reconsideration of materials already adopted. I don't know what that law is saying yet, so obviously nothing here.
Oh,
nothing
no,
here-
I'm just saying the
nothing
word
here addresses,
educational resources.
Nothing in our reconsideration proposals here address what the new law may or may not say. So.
Are library materials not educational resources?
Well,
But my understanding.
Yes or no?
And this, yes, but
Then
this.
this law
But
addresses
my
it.
understanding of the law had to do with adoption, not reconsideration of what has already been adopted or purchased. So if there's a piece of that law that does address that, then obviously we need to go back and dig in there a little bit and make sure whatever comes out of this process fits that, right?
Yeah.
I just was not aware
Okay,
that there was a
okay.
reconsideration. piece
I
to
just
that
want to
law.
make sure we're on the same
It's
page.
very possible.
but can we pull that up?
I'm trying to right
Oh,
now.
good.
I'm also emailing ISBA, Quinn Perry, because they were drafting up their model policy with legal counsel to see where they're at with that, because they were gonna do a policy and procedure on the new code. So I'm emailing her. I'm also pulling up the code if it is updated.
Yeah, and I.
So just really quick for clarification, so I don't lose you, please don't lose your thoughts. So are
It's
we
gone
saying, are we saying that the standing reconsideration committee has a state law that's being changed that is, you're thinking is attached to it, or it is?
No. I think what we're saying is the committees for educational resources and curriculum has been changed. There's
That's the question.
and then
Thank you.
I said that there's no policy in the district policy even discussing the process of anything when it says standing committees. So I did look on the policy manual while we're here, and then I emailed Mr. Knopp and Superintendent Russell just to send any information that they've had in the past on standing committees so that you could see those, but we don't have anything in policy. So I'm only talking about the code that aligns with committees dealing with curriculum and educational materials. That's all.
And I think Mr. Knopp is right. We're going to have this discussion when we get to that point. I think right now, I really would just kind of, and maybe we've gotten too deep into the details already, and we need to back out a little bit and just kind of look at the overall process, and then fill in the details, or you guys fill in the details a little bit. I think we've started that. We've got to. I think we're okay with level 1. All right, how about we start there? Is everyone okay with level 1?
I am. The only reason I was seeking clarification on that is that that's really been, a lot of these will have legislation changes just because, right? Like that's how things change.
And that's where we can tweak them.
And that's where we would have to tweak it. But I guess what we're saying is that if I am, yes, okay with level 1. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but yes, level 1 I was okay with. I think I've got clarification, so I'll quit talking.
And explanations, I'm okay with them.
So I wondered here, I made a note.
Hello? Wait, Jeff,
Yeah.
Jeff, can I talk? Sorry, I'm trying to be polite, but it's hard for me to talk between people. But is there paperwork that you all received with a level 1, level 2 that I didn't receive? Was it was it sent?
It wasn't
'Cause
emailed
you
to
guys
her.
are saying you're okay with level 1. Huh?
Yeah, it's this blue sheet that we got last meeting, and it was supposed to be.
Okay, so level 1.
I do know you're having issues running everything from your phone.
Yeah, it's in hard.
Right, so you probably, so I don't know if you went onto the board docs from your phone. I will email you all the documents that are loaded into board docs on the specific topic, because I do know you are on your phone, you weren't able to see it on by your laptop, so it's probably making it even more complicated. And then I only had 2 documents loaded in the packet, and then there were additional documents that were provided today that just uploaded. So I'll email all of those to you right now.
Okay, so I mean, I know we're not making any decisions right now, so that's good. And I'm hoping that for clarification in level 1, that there's at least when a book is challenged, that it's brought to the board. I think that it should come to us because we need to vote on it. We need to have time to review the book and read it. And I don't like it when it comes to us when it's already gone through the committee and then we don't have very much time to make a decision. So maybe we could be alerted when there is a challenge book and, we could take the time to look at the book. And also, again, Jeff, no offense, but a professional doesn't always mean a wise person. Sometimes a professional can be foolish. So I don't think that sometimes now the books that were in the library I felt were inappropriate and the professional thought they weren't. So I know that that just worrisome to me, that comment.
So,
That's all I have to
Trustee,
say.
okay, so a couple of things on your comments. Appreciate what you're saying. I think what you said, if I heard it right, is being proposed. So let me explain that a little bit. So I don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, you want every challenge book to come straight to the board for us to review it and make a decision? Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean, I think that we need to be alerted. No, well, I think we need to be alerted of challenge books, and then they'll probably start going through a committee and a process. But at least we can be looking at the books if we want, so that when it comes to us, we have time to read we can be actually looking at the book when they're looking at the book.
Okay.
At least,
So-
I mean, if you don't want to read it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes a lot more
Sometimes
sense.
the committee's taking a long, yeah,
So the
because
trigger,
sometimes the committees, it takes a long time to get through a book and then they make a decision and then it comes to us. If we at least are allowed to at least be reading the book, knowing that it's going through a committee, so that when it comes to us, we're kind of had time to look at the book and read it.
Let me just make sure we clarify real quick, Mr. Knopf. So thank you, Tracy, for that explanation, because I just wanted to make sure that we were getting the right information. Your comment was being interpreted the way you wanted it to be interpreted. So that makes sense. And every trustee here is nodding their head. Okay, now we understand. Mr. Knopf.
you don't have this document in front of you, Tracy, but you would see that, so there's a request for reconsideration form that is filled out by the complainant that triggers level 2. And that form is something that can be shared with whatever audience we want that to be shared with.
So we would know what that title is, if nothing but a CC.
And that's actually an example copy of what that reconsideration form looks like, which I think I inherited this. I think it was already created before I moved in, but that is something that triggers level 2, and certainly can be shared with any stakeholders that we feel like it would benefit to have that knowledge, even though like the board is level 4, but even though it may or may not get to level 4, certainly you can see what's in the pipeline.
You would know what's going on.
Absolutely. Yep. So
I had a note here on level 1 and it said post on website of discussion. And I cannot for the life of me remember why I wrote that down there, but I guess it's more of a procedure. If we could have this it's more about transparency. Let's just make sure this is transparent. I
Trustee
wonder.
Taylor, did you mention you wanted all committee meetings and all processes live streamed? Or did I not hear that at
No,
this
I
table
said it.
today?
I just said, I
did
think
hear
that it would
today-
be,
tonight too.
if somebody was ever in question, you could go back to a
Okay.
Zoom.
Hold on, I think.
I think that's where
No,
they're,
we're not.
okay.
I just was talking about the paper
Oh, okay.
process. Here's the process that you will go through if you want to challenge a book. But then I also thought maybe if that's where they could start the challenge, and maybe it's an online form. They click a link, form comes up, they fill it out, hit submit, it goes to the next person, And it's just an automated workflow more than anything. That's going to be up to you guys. But it makes it easier to track. You can track timelines on there. They can get a response back from staff, an automated email response saying, hey, we received your challenge book request. This is the next step in the process. So it's very transparent to the parent or whoever is making that challenge. So we use a system at work called Laserfish, and there's a workflow with that automatically sends notification emails to the next step in the process. I know I'm preaching to the choir here with Courtney sitting at the table.
Yep. The cover page kind of addresses that, but we also envision this as it can be electronic, there can be a flow to it, it can be hard copy. I mean, I'm probably not smart enough to figure out exactly how this is
I actually
transacted.
feel like you're very intelligent.
But we did want something to track where
Yeah.
we're at.
I think that's why I made that note
Both
there.
stakeholders are aware of where we're at in the process, and it's documented. We keep that on file, obviously.
So I think the level one, I think we're all pretty good with that as far, because it's pretty, hey, here's the first step in the process. It's just working out the mechanics of where do they go to send it and all that other kind of stuff, which again, staff, that's your wheelhouse. What about level two then? I think the discussion kind of left on, and I agree with Trustee Simpson that there are levels in place for that progression towards resolution. I think one of the biggest complaints that I heard was they just didn't know where the book was in the process. And so I think if we just kind of focus on here's where you're at, and again, maybe that's an automatic notification, hey, we're going to the next step, or you can bring this to the next step. So it's just that transparency. And so that parents or whoever's making that challenge, I keep saying parents, it could be really anybody, but whoever's making that challenge knows where it is in that process without sending emails and to staff all over and say, hey, what's going on?
So we're talking about the process. What if we can't deliver within the time that we're telling them that we're going to deliver?
Then they need a notice. It's kind of like a public records request. They need to be informed that we're not just sitting on this. And that was a really big sticking point, was that, and I know that staff had some issues with COVID and everything else, and it was all hands on deck and everybody was in the classroom, and I get that through February. But that's where that automated or whatever type of a notification goes back to the challenger, is that right? Challenger, saying it's going to take us a little bit longer because. And I think you're going to resolve a lot of headache and a lot of issues with just the communication.
But I would also like to put some sense of urgency to the district to be able to give an answer.
So,
and if we put something in place, I'm sorry.
And I think we would agree. And that's, we have the 10-day window once we're assigned. So if you go to level 3,
Right.
If we want to give ourselves a little more time so we can at least meet the time commitment, we can say it's a 15-day window. But we're saying basically 10 operational days to assign the committee, get everybody involved. And then once the committee's formed, within that formation, we put 10 days to have their first meeting.
So let's say 15-day passes.
Right.
What happens?
Well, what our policy right here is saying is whatever number we choose, right now it's 10, like you hold your first committee meeting.
So basically.
But first committee meeting is you're making your decision as a committee.
Right.
On what your recommendation is going to be. So it is,
right.
So the way this, Marco, the way we kind of set this up is you get your committee together, you have your book, we give you a window of time. And right now it's 10 operational days. It's probably gonna be about 14 calendar days. We can expand that a little if we need to, but your job is to read the material, do whatever background check, knowledge, whatever else you want to gather. And when the committee meets, you're gonna hash out, come out with a recommendation at that meeting.
Ready to go.
And then what we've offered is the complainant can come back to a second meeting and present before the final say, happens, so to speak.
I just don't want through any of these steps for things to drag on.
Right.
Because that's what ticks off parents.
Yes. Well, and I don't think we want that either.
And there's really nothing in here. We're setting the deadlines, and we want everybody to be compliant with those deadlines. There's things that are going to happen. Communication doesn't happen, the right way, then parents are going, no, the system doesn't work.
I think probably the only snag we run into, and you're right, there's probably something that says we need to communicate where we're at with a particular book, like if the committee didn't actually start the process. The snag you run into is no procedure or process we build is gonna be able to handle 22 books a month.
Right.
Like that's what bogs things down, is when all of a sudden it's, that type of volume. I mean, it's not, like, that's gonna be a bit of a, at any point in time, that we're gonna have to have some grace. Heavy of a look.
Can I say something?
It should be
Sorry,
one more.
Margo. You,
Once it's a particular book would hit this, it'll hold everybody accountable to get this done.
Okay, accountability means that there's.
the thing yes.
We heard
The
you, Tracy.
problem
Hold on.
is we've had these books, we've had books in the library that are there. Oh, hold on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Hello? I'm sorry. It's really hard to know when I can talk. I apologize.
That's all right. You got, we're giving you
I'm
grace.
not okay with this whole process. I feel like what was that? I feel like we're going to end up with the same problem. We're going to have books on the shelves that are sitting there because this process is taking forever. I just think it's this, I don't really see how we're going to solve the problem. I think it's going to end up being a long process, and these books are going to be sitting on the shelves available to kids. And I don't know.
We have to be fair also, because they can only do so much work, Tracy, at any given time. I think that with each book, if they're able to, and we allow them.
How often do you have book challenge? How often do you have a book challenge? Is it one per year?
We got 22 right now.
Do you have? I know. Yeah.
Well,
But,
Tracy, it's Mandy.
There was a year.
Tracy, it's Mandy,
Hi,
and
go ahead.
this is the first time a book has been challenged that I've been on the board. So in almost, a 6 or 7 year span, this is the first time a book has been challenged, but the problem is it's not a book, it's a lot of books.
It's a library.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
when we came in, it's just unfortunate that, there's been a lot of parents coming to meetings and they were ignored. And so we ended up with this result. And so, yeah, we have to try to fix it. But,
well, and I think that there's definitely, we're definitely going to have to give staff some grace on this. And I think there's a couple of things to look at is, one, a lot of these books have already started the process. So there's no reason why they couldn't just pick up where they left off. I mean, I'm sorry, but we've got to get down the road as much as we can. And yeah, it's going to take some time. I mean,
again, that's why I say, so we don't have this problem, is that that's why I brought the librarian up. If we have the gatekeeper there, we probably won't have this problem if we make it more accountability and more available to the public or the parents. I'm trying to think of solutions to prevent this from happening. And I know it's tough because the parents have a life and we all have our lives and we're all busy. But if we have a gatekeeper who believes that the professional gatekeeper who feels everything should be available for students, we're gonna end up in the same problem.
So there's another part in this
long process, and the books are still available on the shelf.
What she's talking about is a selection.
Okay, go ahead.
But we're going back to that, but.
No. I was going to say, in the process that's been proposed that we're looking at now, there is a spot in there, and Trustee Taylor alluded to this in the guiding principles, and Tracy, to your concern, well, what's going to happen with what's going on with the books while we're waiting to go through this process? And I think that's where we get to that 3 option type of thing. Do the books stay in the library? Are they restricted somehow, or do we remove them temporarily until they finish the process? And that's something that we can have a discussion about, but maybe that would determine, depending on what we decide, maybe that will address some of your concerns about what happens to those books now.
Well, and I just want to remind everybody that even prior to all of this, if a parent called in and talked to the librarian, they could have said, I do not want my child to be able to check out this book. And that has not changed. And I think not only has it not changed, but we've brought it to the forefront and let people know in board meetings, but we've also just approved it in our handbooks that parents sign. So they are going to be reading that and seeing that if you do have a problem, here's how you take care of that. And parent for your child, you let the librarian know, like, these are the books I don't want my child checking out and reading.
Yeah, there is that, and there's also books that shouldn't be in the library to begin with. So I get that.
But the librarians were also forthcoming in telling us that there was books that were worse. Like the librarians were really honest and agreeable in that meeting.
And the fact that they're deciding what's worse and what's not.
Well, but what I'm saying is that they came to us just because they're not trying to do that. They were trying to have open conversations because they're a part of our community, and they became a librarian because they believe in books.
No, of course, they believe in books, but they believe in all books. Us.
But some people believe in all books.
Yeah, but these are kids that we're supposed to protect.
But if I'm a parent of all books,
And you buy your books.
right.
In there, yeah, you don't have to.
Sure, I'm just
Then you can go buy your books. They should
right. But
be
what
in
I'm
the
saying is
library.
that it's the belief that's becoming a question. It's that belief, like librarians in books are asking for guiding policy. Like they've asked.
I don't think children should learn how to masturbate, and I don't think they should
I don't,
watch
Tracy.
someone
But
get
Tracy, I
raped.
don't think
These are
anybody
things
does.
that should not be in the school library.
But
Here's the problem.
You just
We're hanging
said
up
all
this
books should be available.
We're the problem. This board right now is the barrier
Can I
to
ask a
getting
question?
through
Hold
this
on,
process.
let me bring
We
it
gotta
back.
focus.
Let me bring it back to what we're discussing here, and that's the challenge process. We're not discussing specific books yet. We're not or any of
Right.
that. We're not
Yeah.
discussing the content.
But we get to discuss all of it.
We already know that. That's why we're here. That's why we're here. So, Mr. Knopf, question.
So my question would be, if we tease out who we've proposed as possible standing committee members, does everything else in level 2 seem like it's doable and it makes sense? Because then I think if we can agree that level 2, having a standing committee, it's kind of that filter of just the whole thing. If that is agreeable, then we can talk about, okay, who's actually on it.
I want to make a suggestion and change the term operational days, only because it's a term that is not widely understood by everyone in the community.
Sure.
If we say calendar days, I think everyone
We
knows
can.
what calendar days. If they, business days or whatever, but operational days, I know some days we're not in school and whatever.
Well, but are we saying that over the summer this process would be the same?
I would
calendar days.
I would maybe suggest calendar days while school's in session.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's why they said
yeah.
operational days
that makes
because they're
sense.
on contract
Well, I
and
just
they're
figured
not.
we'd have
I
administration take
think
it from there during
operational
summer.
days isn't the correct term either.
What's the
If
correct
that's
term?
what you're talking about.
I would
Would you
propose that you
agree?
change it to panel or something. You have the ability to make the semantic work of standing panel, the review panel, so it's not a committee, the district is defining it's not a committee, it's this.
But the days, operational
I think we need to
versus
focus,
calendar.
and I don't think it's either that way either, because like you have your student calendar, you have your district calendar. So are you saying the district's only open during your student school days? Because now I'm hearing we're only going to count the school when the school's in session days. So that wouldn't be district operational days, because according to the state, you guys are open year round, right?
Yeah, but if the people on the standing committee are not in contract.
Well,
We can't make them.
no, but I think, are we calling it our student calendar days?
You could do start of school till end of school, and there
Right.
are multiple other
It
things.
depends
within
on how you're doing it. I don't think operational is the word you want to use.
Calendar days during the school year.
It's going to be complicated.
Is that
The way you guys are talking
ambiguous?
about it
So
today.
here's where operational helps. that includes a teacher work day or a teacher PD day. It doesn't include student, the operation of the school district.
But those
includes-
are approved on the student calendar.
Correct, but that's the operational calendar. We sign a 181-day contract with our employees.
But-
So that's the
But
calendar.
that's only with some of your employees.
Well,
Like
Which-
you're not on 180
Correct,
days.
but the people on that piece, that's the thing.
We're assuming that's the panel or the committee makeup.
so I get what you're saying.
That's an
Mary. So
assumption.
operational days,
So it's still not aligned with anything. Like this, you guys are making it more complicated than it needs to be.
So extend it out and put calendar days, 45 calendar days. That
Or
way you
something.
include weekends, you
Right.
include other, right? So if we want to go to calendar, you just say that.
Yep.
And then you have the exception of other than summer break or whatever, like spring break and stuff, that's fine. Like we can work around that, but that
during the
2.5 month extended period is
yeah, no one's gonna wanna be on that. Animal.
Well, wait, how is
Summer.
that okay? How is that okay though? We're saying if a parent decides that it's too much for them, they're not getting paid to be on it. But we're saying if it's outside the staff member's contract, that we're gonna work around them, but we're not gonna give access
Right,
to the
okay,
student.
hold on a second.
I'm just saying, like, the way you're talking about this calendar, I'd be very careful because we're treating people differently.
Well, okay,
Because I heard tonight
you
say
said
if
contract, so I'm focusing on contract.
I don't think we say contract at all.
You did,
The way we're talking is calendar
Oh,
day.
but we
and
cannot,
student
no,
calendar
I don't
day.
think there should be an expectation to have any staff who is on a 181-day contract
Right.
Correct.
to work on reviewing a book during the summer or on the weekend.
But then,
or that of parents, like that's not the expectation. They
Yeah, I don't think any parent
Their
would,
summertime.
so-
But we just said if a parent doesn't make it and they can't make it on that day, they're not on the committee.
but I don't
Don't
think
we-
that that's what we said. I think
I
we
don't
said if a parent wasn't engaged.
That was in the first proposal that was brought.
But can I ask a question? Because operational days made sense to me because of school being operational. So I really want to, but it's not okay because I really want to understand.
Well, I get the operational days. I'm just thinking of, I knew this was just gonna open a can of worms. I get what operational days means, but there's a lot of parents that don't.
The thought is that the standing committee would meet once a month while school's in session.
Yeah, that's
was
my
the
assumption.
Thought. Now, if we agree that that's a reasonable thought, the words we want to attach to that, to describe that,
Work it in later.
is up to another wordsmith. So,
Well, and
Well,
I'm
like
not either, but
context
operational
behind the
did
thought.
make sense to me because it's when school is in operation was my understanding.
Let's leave it in there then.
Well, we don't have to.
I'm not-
I'm trying to figure out why we
Hold on,
don't need to.
I'm just saying, let's leave it in there so we can move on. Let's leave it in there because this is not gonna be the final product. And
with that question.
leave it in there and we'll move on to the next. I'm not asking any more about calendar days versus operational days.
I just, we're taking so long to do something that is,
It means a lot to a lot of people,
are there any
and that's why
adjustments?
we are taking the time.
Are there any
to hash this
adjustments? So if level 2 sounds pretty good, maybe there's some wordsmithing to make
I
sure. we don't
got
put
no
ourselves
problem
in a
with level
corner.
2.
But then we would talk about,
Well, we have to get the board consensus, not just Jeff's. Does everyone at the
Nice to
table
that.
agree to level 2,
Yes.
including Tracy? Yes, Mandy?
wait, why do we have to get consensus?
Well, but Jeff's the only one saying, yes, I agree with it. And,
Oh, okay.
and
Just
so
so
if
we-
you
just so we
don't,
can move on.
we don't have, I don't think Jeff should
I
control
think
the
the
meeting.
question is, have any input for the team? Because otherwise it sounds like voting.
Well,
That's
that's-
what I want to be
That's
careful
how
about.
that's
Yeah.
what I was worried about too, but that's what
Mandy
Mr. Knox
just
kept
became the
mentioning.
smartest person at the table.
Sorry, I just, yeah, so
I don't have
think-
any further input for level 2.
Yeah,
Next.
No further input for level
Thank
2.
nothing.
I need clarification. Are we okay with, who would be on addressing level 2? Or do we want to make some
Would you
tweaks?
like to provide
and
any more
adjustments to-
information?
Yeah,
You can't
Or
ask,
this-
you're polling them.
yeah.
You have to ask, is there any more input? Because they can't make a decision tonight.
For
Where
the
that-
standing, yeah,
Right, but you keep saying if they're okay, and so it's a very, like Mandy's on the same page I'm on, right?
yeah.
Yes. Is there any more
Standing
input?
Reconsideration Committee that we're gonna change the name.
Level 3.
I don't have any input for other than I would like a name change.
On the standing reconsideration
Yeah.
committee.
On
Go ahead.
level 2?
Yeah, it's at level 1.
Okay.
That's what,
I was just making sure.
yeah,
It's
it's the people that are
move
doing it.
forward, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Level 3.
The only reason I agree is because level 3 has a better.
Level,
Right.
Yeah, that's.
Which
more-
as we
Yeah.
go further
Go
down,
further
yeah.
all right, so apparently we're back the standing committee, or to change the wording, okay? I don't want to.
It was already a
I
note.
know.
I think at the end, let's go over all the notes of the changes that we've said. I have that there is a note that we just said that possibly it could be done as that, like I've taken these little notes and we can put that in like the synopsis of this.
So I do want to ask or provide a little bit of input maybe on the standing reconsideration committee, and that just goes back to how is that committee selected? Is that something that the staff can bring back to us later as to what that process looks like? Is it just going to be a administration saying you're on, you're it, you're it, you're it, and you're it? And it could be, I don't know. That's just.
I did send Mr. Knopp email tonight of the draft committee norms that you guys did at the last meeting, not the very last meeting, but the one when you talked about committees, for him to utilize. It was the one that Mrs. Mon had facilitated with the all the questions of what would you like the makeup of committees to look like? What is the process?
Okay.
So
So
I
he-
sent him all of that. I also have it posted in the packet just in case he wants to utilize that, because that is something you guys did work on with Mrs. Mon.
My only feel like it's different here because this is not a board committee. They're not bringing a recommendation.
It wasn't specific in
to
that.
us. Oh, I was thinking it was. Okay.
That it wasn't when she was drafting that, so we don't have to utilize that.
Gotcha.
But I just provided that because I think that's what this tool was built from.
I think so too, because she
So
used
that
It was, because
curriculum,
you went
Yeah.
through it.
curriculum and supplemental at the same time.
This is what came from
Yeah.
Okay, and that was in the packet. That is in the
that.
packet.
This is also, this
Yeah.
is
Right.
addressing curriculum adoption in the new law.
And then
That work session was all
Yeah.
about that.
no, it was also with the all committees is the conversation that they had,
But if
because
we
we had the
call-
committee policy as well. So I have that.
So, but if we call it a panel,
I almost feel like it is a
But-
panel.
right, and the selection, I mean, I don't,
Quite honestly, the reason it's like that is we call our librarians to see who's available. We call.
I
our
was just
teachers
gonna
who's
ask that.
available. I truly it is, okay.
You
you
teaching
have
a class
time
right now?
and yeah, that's truly, and it looks like that is, the other piece of that, right, is thinking about, again, respecting our employees. If I'm gonna have them do outside of work time work, then I say, if you're on that, then there's a stipend for this piece or those things, or if you do it in building. Those are the reasons that came up from my perspective as an administrator. That's how I would do it.
No, and that makes sense to me, and that's why I said whatever that process
And they're
might
on a
look like.
2-year
But I want to
panel?
make sure that that's.
So they would be, so this one, yeah, exactly, if you did that agreement or how you would do that, so.
So are you guys married to a 2-year commitment?
I'm not.
Okay. But I mean, that's something that maybe can be fleshed out.
I think the idea is to build continuity of the
Well,
process.
yeah, I totally understand that, but you get somebody who's teaching second grade and go, man, I got this 2-year commitment. Anyways, again, that these are details for you guys to figure out and bring back. And level 2, we already went over that.
Level 3.
So level 3, any input from trustees for level 3?
Can I just say what I think level 3 says, because
Sure.
I want to make sure. So so from the time that the complainant says, I don't agree with this panel's decision. So I would like I'm requesting to bring it to a level 3 committee review or level 3 panel review or whatever things get called. So within 10 days of that request, the committee, the focused reconsideration committee is put together, and they're gonna meet and make a decision within 10 days, or within 10 days, you have 10 days to put a committee together, and then the committee has 10 days to review the item that's to be reconsidered and make a decision. There may be a second meeting, because at the first meeting is when they're going to make a decision. There may be a second meeting if the complainant would like to share their views, which then either the committee could change their mind to what their decision was or not. Is that?
Yes. So basically, so a window of time to get the committee together, or the panel together,
10
whatever
days.
we're gonna call it. It could be 10 days, whatever window we want there. We need some time to assemble, and keeping in mind that the assembly of that particular group is gonna include community stakeholders. And so that's not as easy as going to an employee and saying, tag, you're it. And so a little bit of time there, but once the committee, panel, group, whatever we're gonna call it, is assembled,
Yeah.
then we have a window of time for them to do their homework, so to speak. And then you would come meeting number one and hash out what the homework brought up. If the complainant does not wish to be part of whatever decision comes out of this, they can make their decision be done. If the complainant wants to present to the committee, the thought was they would have to sit in the meeting, number one, make sure so they had context to what was going on. Then
discussed.
they would get an opportunity during meeting two to present, and then a decision. So the
Gotcha.
decision would be made either after the first meeting or the second, depending on
Okay.
what the complainant wanted to do. And then, once again, 10 days there is just kind of a suggestion. Certainly, we're thinking of business/operational days when we just say 10. Obviously, any vacations that get put in there. If we want to just do it more by calendar and say there's 14 days or 17 days, or we can work through those. But that was the thought of how that would all work.
Well, and I appreciate that input, because that really is gonna come from you guys. I mean, it's gonna come from staff as to what that looks like. Like, how much time do we need to give ourselves to put a group of people like this together? So, if 10 days works for you, put it in there and bring it back for us to review. I do just want to reiterate one more time, well, not the last time, but one more time, the communication back to the complainant. So if they completely understand, hey, we've got your request at level 3, it's gonna take us this many days to put a group together to review it, and on this day, you should expect blah, 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 communication. If there is beyond those timelines, then there's an explanation and a reason provided. And I think that really is a crux to a lot of this, hey, we just didn't know, we don't know what's going on, and then.
I think you guys might want to look at the reconsideration tool from West Ada. They're very clear on within 10 school days of the receipt of a request for formal reconsideration. So it's saying that within 10 days of the receipt,
Within 10 school days.
yes, that they will designate the superintendent shall. So it doesn't say may, it says shall. They have no choice. Appoint a consideration committee. So within 10 days, it's appointed, it's done. The way we're talking about this one, it's not clear. And this is where you're gonna get in those bumps that you guys were already in.
But I also understand that we're not, the goal is not to come out with something that's clear and concise in this particular meeting.
No, but I think that's
Yeah.
but that's what it feels like that's what you're saying, but I don't feel that's the consensus at the table.
I
What, clear
don't
and
think
concise?
there's any,
Oh, well, I meant like, what I hear is like, well, 10 days, we're not sure about that, but can we all agree upon that? I think we still have a lot of input on each level.
yeah.
Okay,
That's
That's
where I.
that what you're at as well.
We use the verbiage district operations, I think we.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
But that's where it's, so within 10 days of this form being, or within the flow chart, so 10 days of I don't accept the committee's decision. On level 2, we're gathering the committee. 10 days within the committee being gathered, we're actually gonna meet.
Yeah.
Those timelines are.
And I love how you've involved the board. You've made this focused reconsideration committee very community driven.
Yeah.
Which was a really big change, because did you hear how that one said the
Yeah.
superintendent? Kudos. Because that just shows that you're hearing and understanding, and
Here's the only thing now that I've rehashed it in my brain lots, and you're gonna be like, Amanda, you already passed on level 2. I think the complainant has to have a timeline of when they have to say, I want this to move to level 3. Because it can't be a year later they go, yeah, this process needs to go to level 3. Like,
There's got to be a ride or die. If it ain't
right,
moving,
I
it's
mean,
dying.
yeah. So I feel,
Absolutely.
and I don't know that needs to be a long time. Like,
No.
I feel like a week. Like, you get notification, like,
So we had,
you have a week to move it to the next.
right, we talked about 10 operational.
We like
Earlier,
that.
we
We
talked
like the
about,
number 10 on here.
so 10 operational, so 10 school days between level
I just
3
think
and
they're
4.
gonna do it that day.
We can certainly add that
Yeah,
between
of
levels
course
2
we're
and
gonna do
3.
it that day.
Yeah, and I have thought all along that the parent has got to have some skin in the game. If they're not willing
Yeah.
to hit timelines, there should be no expectation of staff.
Yeah.
I am absolutely on board with that, Mandy. I would even go so far, at the risk of great bodily harm, that I think that, and this goes back even before level 1, it goes back to the complaint. I think parents, or whoever is making the complaint, should really come prepared, having read the book. And I know there's a form that I saw in there that you have all that, but I really do think that it's the complainant that's making that case. So you need to come prepared before we spend all this time as we could be teaching kids. I mean, I get that. I totally understand that. But so I really want to make sure that the complainant has some skin in the game on this also. However that might look like. I have a vision of it, but
Do we need to be so clear to say that the complainant agrees?
Is it,
I think so.
hello?
I do. Oh, sorry, Tracy.
Yeah, I was just wondering, was there evidence that there was a parent who complained and didn't read the book? Jeff?
Yeah,
Is
absolutely.
there an issue with parents complaining and not reading the books? That happened?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. You guys hear
So
me?
somebody
Can you hear
complained
me?
about a book and didn't read it.
Can you hear me?
It keeps breaking up, sorry. Now
I don't know what else to
can.
do.
Shake your head.
Yes, there was someone that complained and didn't read it.
Well, I would think that that's a minority, I would hope.
It doesn't matter if it's
You definitely think
minority
if
or
they
not.
are complaining, they should read it. I know, but I just feel like sometimes the parents are being made to be the bad guy here, and I think there was just a lot of disturbing things in the library that were very disturbing, and I don't think there's enough concern about that. Sometimes I think maybe we need to bring one of the books in and read it out loud to the trustees. I just think there's not enough concern, and there's more pointing the finger at the parents. I understand parents, there's a lot of parents need to be more engaged, but at the same time, we are the professionals that are here in these positions trying to be the guardians over the school district and these libraries. And, most of these professionals are being paid for that position. And so I think that when there's these books, some of these books that I just don't see enough appalling response to them, I'm just kind of in awe, really. Because I know there was one parent who started to read the book in one of the meetings, and all I could hear trustees complaining about how horrible that she read it instead of how horrible that was in the library. I'm sorry. I'm very passionate about this. I cannot believe the desensitized attitude towards some of these really horrible books that should not be in an educational library for children. I understand that not all of them, but I feel like, I don't know. I've
Trustees,
never heard, I'm not hearing anybody say, yeah, I don't hear anybody saying, boy, I can't believe that book was in the library. I've never heard the superintendent say it. I've never heard Mandy say it, or Brooke, or anybody. I mean, at
Tracy,
least
I'm not
one.
gonna say it, but it's also not what we're discussing
No.
right now. We're rehashing this, but I'm
Well,
gonna tell you
because
right
feel
now,
like
I
we're pointing the finger at
understand.
the parents.
We're
No.
not trying to change people's minds here. We're trying to come up with a process for reconsideration so that we can move
I know,
forward.
I agree. But I think we need to remember how imperative it is that the parents are involved. Again, I do agree with you, Jeff. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we are aware of these books and that we're not brought to our attention late, so we don't have time to review them. And I think that there needs to be a great concern on what is coming in and out, and that it's not this long process, and that we decide whether we leave it in the library or the parent calls in. I don't know. I think that we're going to end
Yeah.
up in the same situation. I think Ada
Well, and
County has come up with a good solution. Maybe we should look at their solution more. I never saw these levels. I apologize. I don't know who came up with them and how long they were available. The only procedures I remember are the ones that the director of curriculum gave to us a while back, and they were old procedures. So I don't know if I missed these. So I'm kind of lost in that. So I'm not saying I disagree with all these levels, but I have nothing to look at. So.
Okay, so we're looking at some time here. So I know we're not done yet. Anywhere close, but I just want to refocus. We are talking about the process. We're not talking about specific books or content at this point. That process will deal with whatever somebody brings up. Okay, so that's what we're working on. Appreciate the input from staff. Appreciate what you've brought to us so far. We do need to shift gears here. I do want to make sure that I have this on the record, though. I was looking up the current procedure for challenged books, and the only one that I could find that we've received over the last however months when we started asking for them was this one that Miss Mon sent to us. It's called Collection Development Procedures for Nampa Public School Libraries. And my concern is that this says sample all over it and draft. So I don't know when I hear people saying, well, what's the procedure? We already have a procedure in place. It's hard for me to respond to that because it seems like the procedure that they're referring to is one that says sample and draft. So there's just some confusion. I don't know moving forward if that ever comes up again, like you already have a process in place, don't you? Well, no, we don't. We've been working from a draft or a sample, but that's not the process that's been established in the district. I want to make sure that that's, unless I'm totally mistaken and there's something else out there that I haven't seen. Does that make sense on where I come from?
I'm pretty sure that's fairly close to what we have.
Could be. The whole point is
Right.
that people keep
Yeah.
saying, you already have a process in place. Why are you going through this mess? Well, the reason is that there hasn't been a process.
And the confusing piece is it refers us back to the grievance policy.
Yeah, it's
that is a very broad.
Yeah,
right.
it
It's
is.
not specifically dealing with supplemental materials or library.
Again, the whole point of
Right.
working
So
this
this
work
is that,
session and everything else. So again, just the confusion, because when I tell people, when they ask me, "Do you already have a process in place?" I say, no, I don't believe we do.
Can I ask a question?
Please do, absolutely.
The process for the review and reconsideration, or the process for selection?
No, process, it says collection development procedures for Nampa Public School Libraries. And it does go through criteria for selection, but then it also goes through procedures for challenge material. So it has both in here.
Gotcha. No, thank you.
And it's still a sample draft anyways.
So, real quickly, Kim, this right here, this form, have you read the entire content of this material? I will tell you that there's parents out there that they will read up to the point where they feel so disgusted they don't want to read anymore.
Good point.
And because they are religious, the ones that I've talked to are religious in nature, and they just don't want to subject themselves to more of the things that they read. So if we put entire, you're gonna have a group of people that are never gonna read the entire thing, and they're gonna.
That's a good point for consideration. I mean, I was reading through some of these books too, and I'd be like, But yeah, you're right. I think so. Maybe that criteria is one that we look at, consider.
And I don't think, I don't think we're asking that as a disqualifier. I think we're asking that as
Have you or not?
just contextual information of everything.
I would put have you read.
How much of this book have you read, or something to that?
Did you
effect?
enjoy reading?
But it
Yeah.
almost
Maybe
sounds
that's-
like it matters to you know. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
how am I gonna answer this? Because is this gonna be a, you know?
I think Mr. Knott makes the point. Don't use it as a disqualifier.
Just a question, yeah.
Maybe there should be something that says this is not good.
So I hope that we've been able to provide you with some input to move a little bit further down the road.
I can go further down the road. There's some things I can add here.
And we can
You want me to have
certainly,
that?
Yeah.
we can certainly provide input via email if he has
Can I-
questions, as long as it's to the board.
I know because you guys haven't taken
Never
action
mind.
on it.
Yeah,
never
I'm
mind.
gonna type,
Zip everything or just forget everything. I
I'm
just-
gonna type my notes because we can communicate directly.
Well, you can't communicate because you guys have not taken action on this.
So why couldn't I communicate with him about questions or what my notes were?
You can ask him questions to provide feedback to the entire board, so you can put those through me.
Okay,
But you
Yeah,
can't,
that was-
you remember how like you guys took action on the last policy, and then we said administrative, you guys could communicate because you guys had already taken action. This is still pending board approval.
so can I,
So it'd be deliberation really on something that might come up as a.
Right,
the deliberation with him?
right. So that you could change your answer and he'll be forming possibly using your information
Oh,
to
I
make.
see what you're saying.
Okay.
So I can ask questions.
Yes, and I can utilize your form changes to make sure all your guys' notes. I usually, when we do something like this, like what I did with Mrs. Mon, is I drafted up all those notes and sent in that Word document.
Okay, I'm gonna have to take these though.
I agree.
Okay. It's like,
I didn't know how I was gonna decode yours.
Okay, good, because I was like, nope, that should go here. Okay.
And then,
fair.
but I don't mind, and then maybe just get them to me, and then I'll put them all together and send them. Then you can propose them in a package to all of you guys.
My favorite level is level 4.
The end.
Yeah.
The end.
It's only because you haven't taken action on it yet.
No, I totally
Okay.
understand. Yeah, no,
just
I
showed
got
the
that.
typo.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that lively discussion and everybody's input. We are gonna move to health and wellness plan. Who has, do you have this one?
I'm gonna give a very, very brief statement
Oh,
and then
okay.
just open up for questions. Ms. Anita Christensen's here to help outside. So from the perspective of our plan, I believe you all have a copy of it, correct?
It's
Yeah,
in the board
yeah.
package.
Yeah, it's in the board
So
packet.
this is truly about, with what we've dealt with for the last 3 years, and this is a requirement of the state, we have a reopening plan to deal with how we might deal with the COVID-19 outbreak. This plan was in place, I think the exact plan was in place last year. It's how we navigated the school year. We definitely had a few bumps in a couple pieces where there were, or a couple places, excuse me, where there may have been higher than 3% outbreak, and we had to deal with those. But we feel like this plan puts us in a position to be able to keep schools open. It allows us to keep kids in school and keep moving forward. So from the administration perspective, we would submit, unless you have comments or questions or concerns for us, this would be the plan we would propose to you. If there are any specific pieces of feedback or things you would like us to reconsider, we're more than happy to do that. But this would be the plan that we operated with last year, and we would propose doing the same thing for this year.
Mr. Yerber, were you not at the last meeting that it was on the agenda in July?
I was not, I missed the
Okay.
July, yeah. Yep.
See, and I never pay attention behind me, so I do apologize. There was some concerns that were
Okay.
discussed at that meeting. I bet they probably didn't get to you.
They did not, okay.
I'm not sure if Trustee Pearson has her concerns.
Okay.
I'll pull those out of the video and get them sent to you.
That'd be awesome.
I did not do that because I didn't,
But
it was before we did that.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to listen to those.
Yes.
Dr. Russell, I spoke with Dr. Russell about this, we spoke about it
Okay.
previously. Truly, this is the plan, and if there's something that the board wishes to change, we can change that. But
I don't remember discussion about
She just said some
possible
of,
changes,
either
but
do
yeah,
I. She
okay.
did discuss some concerns though.
Okay.
Yes, yes,
What were those concerns? I'd love to take.
we haven't heard them.
So that's what I was wondering. Do you want to go with the? Are you? Okay. I didn't know if you were.
Nope, we're.
Okay. Trustee Pearson, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Do you want me to speak?
Yeah. Have you heard what we're?
My concerns. Yeah, he wants to go with the plan that was presented to us in July, right? And that's the plan that they've been using in the past. And yeah, I did have concerns. First of all, 10-day quarantine is, I believe, too long. Usually, I mean, and I even pulled some information from CDC, and I don't always particularly agree with CDC, but these are some. Test positive for COVID doesn't necessarily mean that you're contagious. Rapid tests detect certain protein pieces of the virus, but those proteins alone don't cause infection. The same goes for PCR tests, which identify the virus's genetic material in your system. So if you're testing people for COVID and they're testing positive, it could be just a piece of a protein of a virus. By the way, the original COVID-19 virus, I don't even know if it's been isolated. There was reports that they hadn't even isolated it yet, which they may have now. So to try to understand a virus, so when, say, someone's infected with the virus, COVID-19 virus, that virus finds an optimal host. That virus could already, that host was optimal, had some comorbidities, became sick. So that virus thrived off of that host. But if it goes to another host and that host isn't as optimal, the virus starts to mutate and change. So we don't even know the viruses. We deal with thousands of viruses all the time, always changing, always mutating. So the original COVID virus is probably not even, it's like pieces of it and mutated pieces of it. I'm not saying that some of that same virus might have gotten into a optimal host and thrived and stayed strong. But most of the COVID, even if you test positive, isn't the original COVID. So that being said, even here in the CDC, if you're testing positive, so if we're going around testing everybody, they might not even be contagious. They might have some protein piece from a piece of the COVID original or some mutated version, or even the same with the PCR tests that they're using. They're identifying virus genetic material in the system. And right here again, I'll quote the CDC, but most experts say that as long as your symptoms are gone, you probably don't need to isolate anymore. And usually, just as we've done in the past, you follow the same rules. If you're sick, you stay home, you don't go to grandma or anybody immune compromised. You stay home, and once you are over your symptoms, or at least 24 to 48 hours after you're fever free, you can go back to school. 10 days is way too long. Here I'm quoting Dr. Monica, her last name Gandhi, an infectious disease specialist at the University of California in San Francisco, says she feels really comfortable with a symptom-free person emerging after 5 days of isolation, even if they're still testing positive. So if you don't have symptoms, first of all, I think an important thing is a person, if they don't have symptoms, they should be at school. And you shouldn't be testing everybody who doesn't have symptoms, because they may test positive and not be contagious. And then I can get into the mask on your procedure. You want to, okay, go ahead.
Just a quick question. We're not testing them. We're not
testing anybody.
Yeah.
We're
So
suggesting they go to the test.
right. I just want to make sure that's clarified.
So if somebody's sick, you
Okay,
make this
no
a test.
testing.
Should we just let her finish? Just
Yep.
because this body communication, and that way we have everything, and then we can turn it to discussion.
Yeah.
That way we don't
she was
interrupt
just
her.
moving on to other things. I just want so Casey,
Okay.
where's yours?
Okay, so I'll continue. You want me to continue? Okay, so again, I don't think we should be testing non-asymptomatic teachers, students. And I think if you're asymptomatic, you should be back at school. If you did have symptoms or you were sick, like any sickness, you should stay home. But if you've been 24 to 48 hours without fever free, you should be, and no symptoms, you should be able to go back to school. So then again, remember that the COVID-19 original virus that came out 2+ years ago is significantly been mutated. I'm not saying that that specific virus may still be out there because it could have found a host that was a really good host. So it became really strong. But if it goes to a host that isn't strong, it doesn't get strong, and it dies and it mutates. And so we're probably not even dealing with the original COVID. And again, so I don't know if you want me to go into the masks. That was another thing where they talked about providing masks for the students. I don't agree with that. I think that if a parent feels that their child should wear a mask, they should provide the mask. I don't think masks are beneficial. I think there's a lot more negative with a mask, especially in a school environment with a bunch of kids. I mean, the biggest inoculation of a virus or bacteria are your hands. So you send children to school with a mask that they're going to be touching viruses. Bacteria are on stuff, your clothes, your books, your computer, anything. Okay. And then you're touching your face and you're touching your mask and you're pulling your mask down. So you're inoculating the inside of the mask if it gets touched in any ways. And then the virus is really happy because you're sitting on your nasal openings that go into your lungs and your trach that go into your lungs, and and then you can go into the mental part of it. I mean, psychologically, we communicate with our smile, our face. And then you're depriving oxygen. I don't know why people don't realize what a big deal that is. And then you're increasing CO2 all day in these kids' brains and their organs. I mean, the masks are not good. But if a parent wants to choose to put a mask on a child, they need to provide it, because if we provide it at the school, kids feel pressured because the teacher's passing them out, and then one's making the other one feel guilty because of their parent thinks it's bad that you don't wear one, or one thinks it's bad that you do wear one. That needs to be not our responsibility, passing them out. I just know the kids feel pressured because kids are like that, with their peers. And so I don't think we should provide them. And then the other thing is no contact tracing. I think that just causes more problems. I think it's against privacy. I mean, I don't want to be somewhere in town and have somebody and then get a phone call from my job saying, oh, so-and-so saw you so-and-so. So they called up, and I just think that's not freedom. So that's all I have to say. And I think it causes more problems when you've got someone calling on that person and the person has no symptoms anyways, and they're saying you have to stay home because they saw you with someone who tested positive. I think contact tracing is horrible. I think it's against freedom. I don't think it works, and I think it causes division, and it's not good for the community or the kids. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. So, Waylon, you want to respond or address some of those?
Yeah, I think, in looking at our plan, I would just, maybe there's, some confusion. We're not passing out. We don't have teachers handing things out. We are not, let me go back to the first piece. We're not testing in schools. We're not testing for, COVID-19 or any variation.
Students or staff?
Students or staff.
Okay.
We are asking them to go to their, correct me if Ms. Trixie, no.
So we do not test them when we do, under a grant, have tests available for staff if they request them, but we
Even
don't
if,
test them. So they can request, can I have a rapid test, and we'll provide them as staff member.
so if the student has a note from mom says, can I get a rapid test here, that's still not going to happen. Okay.
No.
one more question in this same realm. Say that I come to school, I have a runny nose. Do I have to get tested?
You do not have to get
Say
tested.
you're my teacher and you have a runny nose. Do you have to get tested?
No.
Okay. Okay.
So the testing piece that was there, and again, Ms. Christensen can help me with this for sure. The other piece of masks, we're not passing masks out. We don't have teachers passing masks out. We don't have any of those things. There are masks in the nurse's office that with, again, any other disease, if they're symptomatic, we may ask the student to voluntarily wear that. That's the words explicitly used in our plan. We may ask them to voluntarily wear that until a parent comes and gets them if they're sick and they're symptomatic. And that could be, again,
That would
anything.
go with any sickness.
Correct.
And
Exactly.
they would be held there in the nurse's
Correct,
office.
in the nurse's office,
They're not gonna
exactly.
send them back to class and say,
Correct.
wait till your parents get here.
Correct, exactly.
What about if a parent says, because I agree, and I get where Tracy's coming from on
Yeah.
this.
I understand.
But if a parent, wants their kid to wear a mask and then drops them off and goes, oh my gosh, I forgot the mask, go into the office and see if you can get, and then at that point, we should be able to.
That's us serving a kid's
Yeah.
need. I forgot my whatever at home today.
Yeah, and
if
so I
it's
think
asked for, that's very
having
different.
some on hand for that reason, I think is.
We are not passing out, and we are not, in no way is that it to be in this class, you need to do X. That's not.
Or not, because we still have
Correct.
students choosing to mask.
Correct.
I'm still seeing about a fourth as I go into schools.
Yeah,
Okay.
Exactly.
I'm
By
reading it that
choice.
way, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think on our frequent asked questions portion, face coverings are not required to attend school. Students may choose to wear a face covering if they so choose. If a student is demonstrating COVID-19 symptoms, again, here's where I mentioned that, students may be asked to voluntarily wear a mask while in the nurse's office or station. The only reason that's reference to COVID-19 is our COVID-19 reopening plan. But again, other illnesses, it's the same type of scenario.
So what if they don't put a mask on?
And they
They're
don't.
just gonna
Then
sit
we
there and
wait
wait
for
for mom to
Yeah.
get
Mhm.
it.
Do
I got
you
it.
think,
Perfect.
since we're changing this to health and wellness plan like all the other districts in the state, do you think you should say they see, were you just referring to COVID-19 as testing, or was that the
Or health,
masking?
yeah.
Do you just want to say as it, like for any illness? Do you want to
We could
update?
just say it's demonstrating
Would you like to
contagious
just-
symptoms.
Would
Yeah.
you like to do
Doesn't-
that?
For any,
Yeah.
But does this have to be specific to COVID-19?
It does.
I had a
not.
foundational, can I ask, I had a
Well, maybe.
foundational, I had a foundational question and I wanted to address all of this, but my foundational was, and I had to text these in parentheses because I don't like having my phone out, but why do we have a back to school health plan? And is the state of ed requiring it, and are the feds requiring it to get funds?
Yes.
I think that those are the three main questions that I could hear as we've been going through this. So that was my question is some of this language that involves those three things, because I think we have to start and understand that first there, because then we can understand what can be possible. What can be possible? That's such a good word.
That is my understanding. It's a state requirement. We're still in that iteration. I can't tell you exactly
State requirement.
what funds or pieces that is tied to, but yes, that's the state requirement and work with the State Board of Ed. It makes way more sense for us to have a plan than to not have a plan. Right? It is a district. So we do that piece. Now, what we have done, and I was involved, Ms. Trish was involved, Mr. Stockton was involved in the original COVID plan of opening of 2020. I can tell you, this is not that plan. It is not close to that plan, right? So again, a plan and what that looks like, to your comments, Trustee Taylor, of what's possible. I think we've tried to walk that line of, again, providing opportunity for those families that feel the need to mask, that have those things, while also trying to keep a pulse on if we have an illness outbreak. That is something that we do have to be aware of in schools to keep schools open.
Yeah, I like the idea of adding that.
Layer of just a health and
health,
wellness.
Yeah.
Well, because what Allison did that I loved in one of the meetings previously is she really brought this question up in a very robust way. And do you remember that meeting? And she started talking about like all of the different diseases and all communicable diseases so that we could have that broad conversation, because some of these rules involve other diseases. One more question. I could have swore we motioned to change quarantine from 10 to 5 days in one of my very first meetings.
It was the January meeting.
It was 20 to, based on CDC recommendations.
I felt like we did it, and I felt like we
10.
did it for vaccinated people. And I felt like that was the verbiage in it, and I didn't get a chance to go and pull it because this was my, I literally was texting myself as I was driving to my office to print.
I'm trying to think, there was
There was a
something,
change, there was a
and-
motion that took the 10 to
That was
5.
because CDC changed their
But it
guidelines.
was
But
vaccinated.
it was vaccinated only, and so I need clarification on that in this meeting as well.
Leland,
Lauren,
also,
I
it
don't
was the
think-
January 18th meeting.
You went to,
And legal counsel was there. I think I was also emailing Brett just a minute ago. So I'm emailing Kathy Gavi because she's the interim director, right? So I'm CCing you guys on it. And then we can also run it by legal, but because I know like some of the other districts are changing a little bit of their verbiage to kind of.
And the catch with, and one of the big discussions, if I vaguely remember from
I
January.
know, and I'm so sorry because
meeting, so I'm
normally I
sorry,
ask
but-
these before, and this was literally me today.
And if I remember correctly, and please, it could be wrong, but the reason we didn't go with the 5 days instead of 10 is that you have to come back masked for the next 5 at the time. That's still the recommendations from CDC, and we didn't want to go down the mask aisle. We were
Maybe
like,
you were
and we don't
right.
want to go down getting everyone's vaccination status, and we don't want to.
Maybe you were
remember
right.
talking
I
about
just
it.
remember
Yeah.
talking about it, and I just don't remember because I was in agreement. I feel like the 10 days is too long, so totally in agreement with there. But then my memory said I felt like we took care of that, but somebody's gonna have to go back.
Flexibility with staff, right, because we can do that through our HR department. But what we didn't want was to mandate those kids come back and wear a mask the next 5 days. Because then it kind of outs them to their entire student body that they
But
now
if
have
they're,
here.
but like Trustee Pearson was saying, if they're not
Are you gonna pull that?
showing symptoms after
Yeah.
day 2,
Okay.
why do they have to stay out
I feel like
any
that's all I'm
more
doing,
days?
Brooke.
So, and part of the discussion that we've had over more time than I've ever wanted to talk about this subject in my lifetime, I'm sorry, is one of the things is that 24 hours or 48 hours without fever reducing meds. And we just had a large number of folks wanting to get their kids back in school. And so if you pop them with a whole bunch of Tylenol and send them off to school, they don't have a fever, right? And then are we actually, and so then it was balancing the wellness of everyone with some people's need to get their kids. And so then how do you do the right thing for everyone, right? Because our job is to help take care of all of our kids.
Right, you have
And
to
so
consider everybody.
it's that delicate balance. And so we want to do the delicate balance with you because we want kids in school. We're stuck in that. How do you do it right for everyone? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it does make sense, but it also makes sense that, I mean, on the other hand too, I don't want to see kids out, and none of us do. I know I'm preaching to all of them. None of us want to get out of school more than they need to be, especially with the last years they've had to go through. So, if they're not, if they're not sick, back to school. I mean, that's really why I really do understand where Tracy's coming from this, but I also get that's it. Don't anyone ask me where that balance
And then
is.
contact tracing. What are we
There's
doing?
nothing.
So
Because
the
I couldn't find.
only piece that we reference contact
right
tracing
here.
is when we have a larger than 3% outbreak at a school, and if you'll see that is in conjunction with Southwest District Health.
I can hardly hear anything.
There's way more medical experience than I do. That's where the outbreak and the numbers start to grow. Can we find ways to keep people from that number spread from 3 to 15%? I think there's a reality that COVID's in the world now, and contact tracing, I agree, is not the best way to handle that. However, at that point, can we find a way to maybe mitigate the spread? Is the reason that's in there from my perspective.
And it's just a may.
Correct.
It's not a will or a
Correct.
shall. It's just a may. So
May include
options.
So, okay, because this is really just a discussion today, correct? No
Correct.
decisions will be made. We're having the discussion,
Absolutely.
and the plan will reappear on the agenda. Okay?
So I just want to talk, I mean, I know we've talked about it, but on page 3,
I have one more too.
is
I'm glad you said that.
where the 10 days is there, and I get it. I get all of it, and I'm going to tell you that I haven't got COVID once, and my immune system sucks and has since I was 3 years old. So just throwing it out there, but I'm also wearing a lot of masks, but that's my choice, and I get to make that choice. So I fully understand. And I feel like if we're going to a wellness plan, I hope nothing more out of all of this craziness pandemic. We have hopefully learned when you're sick, don't come to school.
Yeah.
Stay home. Nobody wants your germs. We don't want you to share that. So I just think, could we change like symptomatic staff or students should seek? Like just even get rid of the COVID-19 testing, but advice from their regular physician or through the local public health authority. And then I get the reason why if somebody doesn't undergo a COVID-19 test, but I also don't get why would we treat them differently than someone who does undergo a COVID-19 test. So if we're saying that person should remain home until 24 hours after fever's gone and without use, I even just said, looking at what Trustee Pearson was saying, if both of those could just say, if a symptomatic student or staff is to remain home until 24 to 48 hours after symptoms are gone without medication.
So basically taking out the
Of
third
all
bullet.
illness.
Yeah, I
Just
mean,
taking
and
out the
just
word
kind of like
COVID-19.
all illness.
Yeah,
You want,
Right?
All the
I
same.
think what I heard here too, just to be clear, is right here for the at least, right? Is that
Yeah,
what
like
you
get rid of the 10 days.
Yeah.
Agreed.
It's just really
See
for
how-
any illness.
Everybody's
If
different.
you've got symptoms and as soon as 24 to 48 hours they're gone without medication, and I think that's an important piece, right? And I don't know if we need to put contagious symptoms in there, because I also think like allergies are not
Are different,
contagious,
yeah.
and that's different. And
I actually really
medications
like
for
that.
allergies.
Hard, right?
Do you know what I mean?
And if you keep
But
the word fever,
right,
because you're
and
saying
fever,
to keep that
yeah.
in,
Yeah,
that's what I'm
like just
hearing, right?
making some of those changes, and I don't know. Oh, we did lose Tracy, but I just
It's having a couple of times, I think
Oh.
she's just,
okay.
maybe to hear a little better.
But I think
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just really hard for me to hear. Sorry.
I think that kind of encompasses the things that I hear her talking about, but that kind of just makes sense in a wellness,
In the health and wellness.
plan
I
moving
agree.
And
forward.
it's very open, so that whatever comes our way in the future, COVID-28.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So, it,
Shut your
and this doesn't, yeah. There's a great TikTok about 35 years
Yeah.
ago. So we had this, and he's like, go to Walmart and buy the toilet paper. It's a funny ad. So, there are a couple diseases though that do have a protocol of schools. For example, MRSA or whooping cough. That there are other pieces. So when we talk about the health and wellness piece, I think we can be vague enough to say contagious symptoms, knowing that there's still another body of stuff we have to do if that's there, because we don't have clear guidance on here's what you do in COVID-19. If COVID-19 was one of those illnesses, or we had health professionals telling us this is what we do, then I think we have to at least consider that. But this allows us flexibility, I think, would be my 2 cents from thinking that through. So
So are you guys asking, and I think it's because we want to get done rather
Yeah,
soon.
well,
We're at our
we
time
want to get
limit.
at 7:30,
Um,
so I think we're right.
Are you
almost right
guys
there.
thinking that the staff is going to take out and update throughout the entire plan our fun verbiage of COVID-19, anywhere that is, with the verbiage that you've talked about today? Illness, that contagious symptoms in that subsection that I just emailed to Kathy Gobby. Are you guys asking them to go through that, or you want them to keep it in some of it? Because there is vaccinations, but you are required to have I want to call them immunizations rather than
I mean, they're
vaccinations.
required.
I agree,
So
but
do you want to do, is that what you guys are asking them to
I
kind
think
of
that I
update
hear
some of
that,
the
but I
verbiage?
want to talk about some places where this verbiage is a little bit conflicting too,
Perfect.
because when we have vaccinations right here, so when it says COVID-19 vaccinations are not required to attend school, COVID-19 vaccination are optional and may be obtained through your local health provider. If you so choose, other vaccinations may be required. So please check with your school news for further information. Right? I totally
The
understand that.
vaccines aren't required.
Well,
You can't require them
you
anymore.
can't
They have to sign an
require them.
opt-out.
They have to sign an opt-out. So that's what I was going to say is, would it behoove us to update that to what really the state guidelines are and the options that people really have? And then right here, district level expectations. We encourage all eligible staff members to become vaccinated. I don't love that. I just do not love that. And I just have always hated that that's there. But I do agree, we encourage families to notify the school if students are ill or sick. And I like that there because I do feel like that the teachers, like if a child's sick, a teacher needs to prepare their work. If a child is sick, the teacher needs to, because like my son had to have his tonsils out.
I don't even know why we have to, I don't even know why that has to be in there, anything about encourage vaccinations.
Agreed.
If an adult wants to get it.
That's what I'm saying, we can take that out. But I do think that we, as a district, we really do encourage, and this goes back to communication. If your child's sick, the teacher needs that communication to know to prepare for work, right? So like when Gage has his tonsils out, we were able to, do you guys follow what I'm saying? So I just think that the first statement needs to be eliminated. I don't think that we should encourage that. But I think everything else is in alignment with when you're saying we discourage students and staff to coming from school when ill, because we're just talking about illness. We encourage families to notify the school if students are ill or sick, because you just literally have to say, you don't even have to disclose that much, but then the teacher just has an expectation of maybe the child will be out for a few days.
And we could direct our staff, Anita and Waylon, to update it with all the conversation they've heard tonight. And then any other thing, you could also edit after reading all of it, if there's anything you guys wanted to put in, and then just explain it.
Yeah, I like that.
And then, but we're also gonna verify, so, because we have a
Yes,
balance.
verify.
We do have
We
a
are
balance here.
verifying.
If this has to be our COVID plan, and if it has to include that language. we have to
That's
be
why
really
I asked
careful.
the first
We also
question.
don't violate our communicable diseases policy. And
That's
so,
why I asked those
because
first three
there are some
questions.
things that we have to follow when it comes to other, like,
And that's why you're here.
and so.
That's why-
So that's why I'm like,
you're here.
I wanna be really careful, because we don't get to just, cause your symptoms are better, you get to come back to school if you have whooping cough. If you have pertussis, you actually have to follow the guidelines of your 48 hours on antibiotic, like, there's
And
rules, and so I
Understood.
don't wanna.
And if those students that aren't immunized, right? That, let's say we have a mumps outbreak.
Yeah.
Because didn't we
There
just
is a
have one a
different
few years
rule.
ago?
Yeah, there is a different.
Then we have to also protect those students that have signed our
Yeah.
opt out. So they still have all that, even though it's not in this plan. And I think that's what we're waiting for is what. And so I think we could also, pending legal, we could, once we get update, we could email it
To
to legal
legal
as
and
well.
pending legal, but that's why I asked
If
those
you guys
first
are
three
comfortable.
foundational questions.
Because
and that's why I said, what do we have to know?
So that we can follow our communicable disease policy and the state requirements and those arenas too, because it's all a balance, like, it's COVID's like our one exception clause, we don't get to just,
No, I
it seems,
understand.
whereas others were like, you have to do this step by step.
Why couldn't you just put something like that in there as a
Well,
last
that's
parting
what I
thought?
wonder is,
Yeah, it's just like a
if
disclaimer.
it can be a health
And
health
that's
and wellness plan,
I
can
have
there
a
be a
couple that-
disclaimer
okay.
that we,
perfect.
You have
the
to follow
communicable diseases policy supersedes,
Something like that.
I
And
don't
then
know.
taking out the
I'm
places
not
where we
legal,
have,
so-
just because the word encourage and expectation are not this, they cancel each other out. Like, this is our expectation, but we encourage. That is not, it goes like this.
So any further clarifications that you may need from us right now?
May I ask one more, just because we're starting, right? And so
Yeah.
we're gonna live under what we have until, until action is taken to change it. As you're thinking about actions and communicating to families. So we did do some shifting on how we communicate COVID cases to families. To secondaries, we did a dashboard.
Wait 1 second.
Oh, sorry.
Is that in here or is the dashboard
Yes.
on the site? Just tell me what page so I can meet with
the
you
dashboard
on our
is
website.
on our district website. It's kind of hidden, but it's.
I know where it
it's,
is.
Can we put did you guys use the dashboard last year?
We did.
I didn't see a tab in the plan, but did I ever look at the communication piece?
I don't think that we have it linked in here because they kept moving it where it's at on our website.
Okay.
And so
I
we don't
thought
want
that-
to, we don't
I
want to
hear
give
you.
anyone dead links. And so
I just
if
got
you
excited.
found the plan on our website, you found the dashboard. It was all in
Okay.
one site, so we
If
weren't.
someone's gonna find it,
overcomplicate
it's gonna be her.
But so what we did at secondary is we just, leaders would send and remind in their newsletters to please check the dashboard. At elementary, we sent a letter to the entire classroom. So just to the impacted classroom. So if you had a first grader in a classroom be positive for COVID, we sent a letter just to those first grade parents because at the height of COVID, that was so many letters every parent was getting. They're still laughing.
Do you
So
do
we
that
tried-
with all diseases? Like if there were mumps?
So it's a, so
Sorry.
mumps, so
Certainly you have
mumps,
to.
Right.
Not necessary.
some mumps is usually a yes, we have to.
Right, but do you do that
Varicella,
same for?
I'm sorry, but for, pertussis, so whooping cough, there's actually a threshold we have to meet. So there's actually a whole outlined plan of when we have to communicate out a case of, and they even.
We'll use that dashboard, the same process.
So
We don't use the dashboard because we don't have so many cases of
yeah.
pertussis that we would have it
Oh,
need a
We
dashboard.
hope
Does
to
that
never
make
have
sense?
pertussis.
Maybe we
That
never
is
have
true.
it.
That's
Like,
true.
you talk about
If we have a dashboard, there's other issues.
I just like the dashboard.
So what's the end, so you're letting us know because you'll continue with that until we make those changes,
Yes,
is what you're saying.
But currently, we would continue that with how this plan is written, is that we'd only do to the classroom of elementary students, and that secondaries would be directed to do the dashboard because we didn't want to inundate families with more communication.
Yeah, so
about this.
we're not, obviously not changing
Changing it,
anything
yeah.
right here, so you have
So
to,
I just
you
want to
have
make sure
to
that that's
use what you
embedded
got.
in there. If
And-
you want that change, just you'd want to be able to give us that feedback so we can consider it. So,
And remind is replaced with parent square.
Correct.
yes.
And I think we have to verify that we can remove
We can
the
change it. I
dashboard
have the
from
question.
Correct.
per the federal thing, 'cause I think that's part of their communication part,
think it is
right?
too.
Through the
So
SR.
we have our very own dashboard, like a Nampa School District, we tell you by school and location.
Oh, okay.
We do.
So sorry, I mean, we didn't explain this clearly.
Okay, no, I got it now.
Oh, okay, I'm so sorry.
We
I
have
was
our
like,
own.
it was very building specific, so you'd know how many students or staff. That's not a mandated thing. That's just how we switched to not inundate our secondary parents with 18 letters.
Appreciate that.
We love them and appreciate them, but we knew they weren't getting the message if we kept sending like students today, because there were
Delete,
7.
delete,
And then
delete.
tomorrow it's 1 student, so you got a letter every single day at the secondary, and it didn't make sense to do that to families, and
Could
so.
I have you talk to my employer? Because I think that they kind of do that same thing.
I'll just reach out to you because I just found the dashboard and there was in it, like, so the back to school checklist. On the dashboard on the website. So sorry.
That's what we've been for last year.
So-
So is this
Yep.
still, so we're gonna update this whole page, right?
Well,
What's the
we
plan
really
is?
thought we would have a new plan for going into the year, so
Okay.
we kind of still have to live under last year's plan. 'cause
Until we
didn't
change
get
it.
We have
it
to
approved
change
to
it.
change it.
Okay.
Right?
I think
Yeah.
Sandy was on
Yeah.
September. I think
Yeah.
by the 12th, we would be needed. That's good, right? Our changes, what we talked about today, changes
Oh,
coming
I
back
would
to the
hope,
board.
yes.
The September 12th meeting.
September 12th for action.
I think so.
But
Let's
I would
just-
have to create a new dashboard for the coming year, which I will do, because we're gonna start a school year out and we need to be able to do the data collection and live within this plan. I just don't know about how many changes we can make to that page when we don't have a new plan to direct. Does that
So
make sense?
I would maybe look at getting the changes made as soon as possible.
When is our next
So,
meeting?
so we can get,
I
all
don't
those-
know what the schedule looks like.
We can get all those things done, and then if we put it on the regular board meeting, September 12th is your next meeting, so we can have all that ready.
But if we had, I'm getting ahead. I know she's gonna.
I
hit me
think
with
what he's
something.
suggesting
There-
is more input at a possible special meeting, including having an action item if possible, but I'll email the staff tomorrow and then I'll update the board if that works for
How
everyone.
long do we have, like, from work session, is there a?
I think we should end the meeting.
Okay, let's end the meeting. So at 7:41, this work session, this meeting is adjourned.
So what period?
Oh, hold on. Now we gotta wait for him.